Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, where Iowa Joe and I are prepping for Bears Week. Honestly, the first important Bears Week it's been a while. Maybe the 2019 opener, like in terms of where expectations are high for both teams. I feel like that was the last one. I guess, you had the back-to-back season openers. You had 2019, LaFleur's first game. 2018 was Mani. But then, the last game where it was late in the season and there was any sort of playoff implication, it was the 2013 season, the season finale, Rogers to Cobb game and stuff. So it's interesting to see the Bears back. We'll go into a lot of the matchups and stuff. But Joe, how are you feeling that the Bears have something right? They have stakes in a game other than trying not to get embarrassed by the Packers again.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty sad when your head coach isn't even really glowing about how certain parts of your team are playing right now. I mean, the Bears are always going to be rough. I mean, you can just take a look at last year. Had it not been for the tips of the fingers of Carl Brooks, that game would have been completely different. And then, of course, it happened again in the game that I don't remember because I was sick and it was all a fever dream. So it just, this is a heated rival. I can't remember what the overall record is, but I know they've been playing since since the inception of the Green Bay Packers. So, of course, it's always going to be a meaningful game, whether or not the records reflect it or not. But you are right, where both teams are at the top of the NFC North. This is technically a battle for maybe the NFC number one seed, perhaps, maybe, because of the Rams losing last week. So, there is a lot of money on this one. And this is also another one in the long line of the divisional games that we have coming up. And you said it the last couple weeks that these aren't just games you can take lightly. You have to be in them. And that because they are division rivals, they are going to play you tough no matter what.
Yep. It's like I said, Packers fans can say whatever they want about, how much of a paper tiger the Bears are, how legitimate their record is. As it stands, they're the number one seed in the NFC. Bill Parcells is famous for saying you are what your record says you are. And, Packers fans can say whatever they want, but if the Packers don't go and win these two games, Bears fans get to puff their chest out because basically if they win those two games, that's the division at this point. Like, the Bears would have to, so the Packers would be 2.5 behind the Bears. And I guess if they lost their other 3 games and the Packers won their 3 games, they would still win the division by half a game. It's going to be a really interesting final 5 weeks because of who the Packers play between the Bears and, we go Bears at Broncos, at Bears, Ravens, at Minnesota. And on the other side of the docket, it's really funny because the Lions are going to be cheering for us. And we're going to be probably cheering for the Lions come week 18 because in all likelihood, whether it's to I get the feeling that we will take care of business, but because that road to Denver, that road game in Denver, home against Baltimore, those are going to be, I don't know what Baltimore is going to be playing for come week 17. There's a chance that they're just out of it and maybe they're like, screw it. Like, let's just, Lamar is still not healthy. Let's just punt kind of thing. I get the feeling they're going to be in the run of it, in the thick of it. So that game's going to be real. And, as much as Minnesota is probably just going to be, licking their wounds in week 18, that's still, we thought the Bears would be like that last season, and they weren't. They had fired their head coach and all that kind of stuff, and they still came out, gave a tough game against the Packers in week 18. So I get this feeling that it's gonna come down to week 18, but in the sense that like we're gonna be rooting for the Lions because if the Lions win, we don't have to win, kind of. Then it's like just for overall seeding in the conference. But like I said, like you mentioned that I had said, and I'm gonna say it again. The Packers just have to take care of business and control the controllables. If you win these 3 division games, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but the 2 AFC games more become about playoff seeding. And McCarthy used to say it all the time that if you can go 6-0 in the division, which is a tough thing to do, you're more than halfway to making the playoffs. Because I know we're in a 17 games, but back in the 16 game season, if you go 6-0 in the division and your aim is to win like 10, 11 games, you're over halfway there and stuff. And the Packers have had their slip ups this season, but I do expect them to wake up and take the Bears seriously. It the other times that they've had slip ups, it's been opponents that everyone has deemed inferior. The only concern I do have is like we've been at this crossroad before in the season. You open the season against the Lions and Washington, 2 playoff teams that were expected to do well this season. Everyone's on a high. You go to Cleveland, lay an egg, and then you go to Dallas, you blow that win, and you get the tie. Then you come out of the bye, you beat Cincinnati, by 2 scores. You have to come back against the Cardinals, and then you have a pretty convincing win against the Steelers. And then you lay an A against Carolina. Tucker gets injured. You're kind of listless on offense and then the next week you just look lost against the Eagles. And now, again, you've clawed your way back with 3 straight wins against the Giants, Vikings, and Lions. And the big key for me this week is, are the Packers going to be able to keep their momentum going? It's something that they haven't done. They haven't won 4 in a row yet this season. It'd be a nice friggin' time for them to do it for the first time in 2025. But, I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but like that just speaks to how important this game is. And back when we did our season preview, we kind of joked like, who knows what Chicago's going to be by the time we get to this point in the season? Is Caleb even going to be starting, whether it's due to health or poor play? We're kind of saying like, is Caleb going to be having the season JJ McCarthy is having, kind of thing? Like that was where our heads were at. So kudos to Ben Johnson for getting that team here. But before I get into the injury report, Joe, like any just off the cuff thoughts that you have going into this one that like, just in terms of how the team is, the vibes that you're feeling from the team, or, what you're seeing out of Chicago overall that needs to be said before we kind of go through our usual skeleton for the episode?
I'll say, since we're getting ready to do the injury reports anyway, I'll say that, it seems like the Packers are starting to get a lot of guys back that should help out a lot in the coming weeks, as long as, there's no setbacks or anything. Now, we can go ahead and jump into the injury report, but I'm going to throw this question out there. I've thrown it out to a couple different shows, people, and all that, and nobody's answered me yet. So I'm going to hit the button, and then we'll jump into the injury report, or I'll throw in the question, and then we'll jump in the injury report.
Excuse me! I'm in need of medical attention!
So, and we'll get in depth with the medical report or the injury report after the question. But right now there are 4 guys that they've
designated. The 21-day window is open. Yeah.
So you got Brenton Cox, Jaden Reed, Colin Oliver, and
Marshawn Lloyd.
Marshawn Lloyd. Why did I blank on Lloyd?
Because everyone's wanted to forget him already.
So you have those 4 guys and with Reed and and maybe Lloyd a little bit closer than the others because they're actually fully participating. And I mean, they're listed as limited in the report, but for all intents and purposes, they're full participation because they're in pads, they're running drills, and all
Like
that
you,
stuff.
and kind of like you're alluding to, they're the two that we've got clips of. Like
Yeah.
all the reporters are like, look at these two guys. And to that point, like Reed looked way better than he did when he started the season. When, I was on here going like, he doesn't look at all good. Like, I don't know what they're going to shoot his foot up with, but that doesn't look like a guy who can play. And Lloyd, like, I had no idea what to expect out of him. And, it's that clip Schneidman posted where he's catching like a little sit route in front of the quarterback. And I'm like, that looked pretty good. He turned around pretty quick and like
Yeah.
got out of there. Like, different people are getting their shots in, like all the like, oh, it's his first practice and his last kind of thing and stuff. But I'm like, yeah, I kind of think I know where you're going, but please finish the question.
So actually, you might not know where my question's going to. So the question that I've been asking, and something I want to touch on real quick, the Lloyd thing, it's listing him as a calf, and we know it's the hamstring. So I wonder, I've already seen and heard some people take shots at that. Oh, great, he's already suffering from another injury. But anyway, the question is, you have those four guys. You just brought in a free agent off the practice squad of the Giants, and you can talk about him a little bit too, that takes the Devontae Wyatt spot. Who are we getting rid of to bring those four guys back?
Okay, so, and I wrote an article about this for the website. So Jordan Riley, the defensive tackle they signed off the Giants practice squad, he actually isn't taking Wyatt. Well, okay, he's taking Wyatt's spot in the D line room, but in terms of 53-man roster spot, he is taking the spot they opened when they released Shepard. Because they released Shepard yesterday and they just signed him back to the practice squad today. So, and I thought that, okay, so because they worked they worked like 6 guys out yesterday. So this is Wednesday. Sorry. So on Tuesday, they worked like 6 or 7 guys out, including 2 defensive tackles, 1 former Nebraska kid, 1 former guy that we definitely, or that I definitely liked coming out of the draft. I realize that predates this show, but Ross Blacklock from TCU, who I really liked as a potential day 2 pick for the Packers in 2020, has never found his way with Houston, bounced around like 4 other teams, and I think has been out of the league this season. Maybe was on a practice squad, but when they didn't immediately sign him or the other guy they worked out, I was kind of like, okay, they've released Shepard. That's a sign that Jaden Reed is like gonna play this week. I know that there are reports that he was really pushing along with Golden, but Golden's already on the roster. But the 2 of them were really trying to like plead their case to get to play on Thanksgiving. Golden even worked out before the game. So I thought Shepard's release was to bring Reed up. But then they turn around and they announced that they signed Jordan Riley. So he's taking that roster spot. So Devontae Wyatt is not on IR yet. So that's 1 spot for the 4 guys. So the players that maybe I should open my article to make sure I call out the right ones. But so in order, the guys that I listed were Malik Heath. That one is purely like it. The main one is it's a numbers thing. At this point of the season, and with all the other injury issues they're running into, they can't keep 7 wide receivers on the active roster. Like, I shouldn't say they can't, but I don't think it would be the most prudent use of 53 roster spots. Now, that's not to say that they won't cut. Well, and that's the thing is like Reed can just take Wyatt's spot. Like that's the easy one. Is Reed is probably the closest guy to being ready, and so Wyatt's going on IR this weekend. There's no reason for him not to at this point. So whoever's most ready is getting that roster spot. Then when you get past, let's just say it's Jaden Reed. When you get past that, then it gets into the 5 names that I listed are Malik Heath, Donovan Jennings, Jacob Monk, Aaron Mosby, and Christian Welch. And so I already started going into Heath. And like I said, it's just a numbers thing. Maybe he hangs on for a couple weeks, depending on how long it takes for the guys after Reed, whether it's kind of who gets there first kind of thing. And like Reed's going to be on a pitch count. As much as they're saying Golden's ready to come back, you don't know. And Savion didn't practice on Wednesday. And that's another like one where they could go the only in terms of like Savion going on IR, the only reason I don't think they would is they should have put him on before Thanksgiving. If that was the case, you missed the game, like, and so unless they're like, oh, like it's not getting better or he aggravated it in like rehab or whatever kind of thing, then that like takes care and Heath will still have a spot on the team. So that's why Heath was my first one. With Jennings, the Packers have 9 offensive linemen on the active roster right now. You activate 8 on game day because you get the extra game day active spot if you have an 8th lineman. And so, like, Jennings has been a healthy sit for like a month, basically. Basically, since Monk has come back, he's been a healthy sit pretty much every week, I think, at this point. Except for a couple of the ones where Belton was injured. So and then you still have like Banks, who was on the active roster for a cup of tea. He's back on the practice squad. So like they have, and Lacita Smith, and that's why I also said Monk is a potential cut for the same reasons as Jennings. But then you still have Lacita Smith on the practice squad in case you're like, oh shoot, we need a center. And if someone else picks up Monk, I can't see anyone doing that because they'd have to claim the rest of his rookie contract. Not that he's like earning that much, but like if he's so like the way teams look at it is like if Green Bay's cutting bait, like why are we gonna pay his draft pick contract when we could like wait for him to pass waivers and then we approach him and sign him for like the prorated vet minimum kind of thing. So I do think Monk is less likely because even though you have Smith on the practice squad, Monk is the backup center right now. Like, Ryan was the backup before and Monk was kind of the third center. But because Jenkins is on IR, Monk is the second, and he's been active on game days. So, like, that's why I have him less likely than.
I'll give you another reason why he's probably not a candidate. They would have never put him as a designated to return.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Mosby, and so like Mosby and Welch kind of fall in the same bin because they're more there for special teams. I have Mosby higher on the replace list because one, both Cox and Oliver are listed as D linemen. I know Oliver was announced as a linebacker at the draft, but he's probably going to be a defensive pass rush specialist when he initially comes back, especially because he's missed so much time to this point in the season. But it's like you can't have 7 like it's the same idea with Heath. It's even harder to have 7 defensive ends, and I know that Mosby is up there for special teams, but and Cox doesn't play special teams, but I think in that sense, it's like, Colin, if you're going to get on the roster, you're going to play special teams. Like, that's your only way to guarantee you're going to get playing time. Plus, I know they were cross-training Baron Sorrell at a bunch of the same spots where Mosby would be playing and stuff. I think there's a route to cover Mosby's snaps. Welch, I have there because they've already released Welch like 40 bazillion times at this point. But I don't think the only way I can see him getting cut is if Oliver is actually going to play linebacker, because right now Welch is the 4th linebacker. And we saw, to the dismay of many, that when Edge, Quay was out with the stinger on Thanksgiving, so they went into the game with only 3 linebackers. And when Edge got his stinger, it was they only had 4 linebackers on the roster. Sorry, but when Edge got injured, it was Welch who went in nickel next to McDuffie, not Hopper. And I know that a lot of people were like, "Whoa," but I'm like, I think that speaks to where Hopper realistically stands with the team. Is like, you got to remember the dude like played like maybe 2 defensive snaps all of his rookie season, if that. I think he was a healthy scratch a bunch of weeks. Like, you and I have a higher opinion of Welch than a lot of people do, but like, he's been in the system for 3 seasons basically at this point. And like I said, it speaks a lot that when your starting linebacker, the your one like high rep starter who was in the game goes out, they put in Welch over Hopper. So to me, that is another reason why like they they would probably cut Hopper before they cut Welch at this point, which I know a lot of people would be like, what? But just in terms of both special teams and defensive impact, I know Hopper's gotten more overall snaps than Welch, but I think they trust Welch to do more of the multiple positions if there are like multiple injuries at the linebacker spot. So that's why like I listed those 5 names, but like Monk and Welch are really more 4 and 5 than they are like 3 and 5, like how I listed them out in the article. I do think, in no particular order, the 3 to watch are Heath, Jennings, and Mosby. Like those are the 3 names that if I had to tell you 3 players, I figured if all 4 of those guys make it back, because like I said, one of them is getting Wyatt's spot when he goes on IR. Heath, Mosby, and Jennings are the 3 that I'm like, those are probably the ones that are going to go. Some other names that I listed in the unlikely category are the 2 running backs in Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson. I just, especially with Jacobs banged up, I don't think you can cut Wilson. Lloyd's injury history, you can't like, okay, like he's finally healthy. Like you can't count on that at this point. And with Brooks, it's like, I know he's not a dynamic runner or receiving option, but what he does as a pass blocker is way too important to cut him loose. And we saw him we haven't seen it yet this season, but as a lead blocker, he was pretty awesome as well. And I think due to all the injuries, we just haven't seen that aspect of the offense come back either. So I think they're safe. I don't want to say no matter what, but basically they're pretty safe. Like I said, there is the option that Savion goes on IR. I don't think it'll happen because they should have done it last week, but who knows how his injury is progressing or not progressing kind of thing.
And on top of that, they didn't need to waste the spot.
Yeah.
They didn't have anybody to fill it, so
that's true.
Why IR him when you don't need the spot?
I guess that's true, but they have gone with 52 or 51 players for a week or 2 at a time this season. And then
well, yeah, but I get that, but like it's one of those things that they've been awful quiet on the injury.
Yeah,
and it's
like
one
the
of those
Lucas situation where they're
right. If it was like Jesus, I'm blanking on names today. If it was like Elton or if it was like Devontae or something like that, where we know there's no chance in hell that they're coming back, they just automatically, slap them on IR and call it good. Whereas they've been kind of mum on the Savion one, so I wonder if that could be the move for Jaden, and go from there. Who knows, if it's not a season ending, they still have 4 weeks and then he can be back.
That's true. Yeah.
It is what it is. But the one other name that other people might not think, but I've got a feeling on could be possible, and he could be probably snuck through the waiver wire and brought back on the practice squad, is Stackhouse. And the reason I say that is because I think he only played like 5 snaps total on Thanksgiving, and now they just brought in a guy that is bigger than him.
Version of him, yeah.
So
I'm wondering, and not just Thanksgiving. Like he only played like 3 snaps against the Vikings, and I know one of them was important. It was the 4, or 2 of them, I guess, because there was the back-to-back 3rd and 4th down stops that killed the one drive. But even against the Giants, I think he only played like 6 snaps or something. So he hasn't played 20 snaps in a month, like over a month. So, and then the other 2 names I did list which I thought were unlikely, is Kitan Oladapo and Zane Anderson. I just like, I'm just like, oh, like, those are guys that don't play defense, but I think they're just such core special teams players and they have like, Kitan's just been a steady contributor on a bunch of the units, and Zane has been one of the few special teams guys who has lived up to his reputation. The international man of mystery has come through more often than not. I mean, he's the one who recovered the fumble against Minnesota, the muffed punt. So, yeah, I think it's a fair question to ask, and I'm really curious to see how they go. Because, like I said, at some point, I don't think they can carry 7 wide receivers on the active roster, but I'm not sure if that'll organically take care of itself. You know what I mean? Like, whether
But the
it's
sad
saving.
truth is they have.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is like, I'm saying is if 6 of them are fully healthy, the 6 of them are fully healthy, the 6 not Heath ones are fully healthy, I don't think they'll keep Heath. But Savion's foot continues to be an issue. Reed needs to ramp up kind of thing and stuff. Like, it does hurt that Heath doesn't play special teams, but I think that if 2 of the or 3, like Golden, we still don't know how many snaps he's going to play when he comes back either. So like I said, I can see a world where, like, the easy one is Reed just gets Wyatt's spot this week. And then I'm pretty certain, they haven't said, but I'm almost certain Brenton Cox got core muscle surgery. That's the only way I can see him being out from week 1 to now, because it is like a 2-month rehab thing for a core muscle surgery, for sports hernia surgery. So you can't condition with that. Like, you can do like water work and stuff like that, but like, if you've ever pulled an oblique, like, that you don't want to move kind of thing and
But
stuff.
they keep listing it as a groin. Would that have anything?
Yeah, that is sports hernia. Like
Okay.
yeah. I can't say every one of them, but groin is part of the core, and like core muscle surgery is another. Like, they're not the same, but it's like a rectangles and squares thing, is what my brother has told me, and he is a doctor. But
Well, then I need to get him on here so he can explain this shit to us.
I know. I'll try, but I think he's working right now. And so,
Yeah, but he's a doctor. How much does he actually do?
But suffice it to say,
I'm sorry, it was a bad joke, but I had to make it.
it's there. It's good. I do think the 2 defensive guys are going to take most, if not all, of their 21-day window. And there's a chance that either or both of them don't make it back. Like, I think people need to understand that that's a potential reality, as they open the window and you just don't come back. Lloyd, I really think Lloyd will be back maybe as soon as Denver or the second Chicago game. Like, he looks that good, and I know that, like, the feedback we've gotten seemed really positive. Like, LaFleur mentioned that it seemed like he got himself sorted out when he went back to California. Lloyd basically echoed those sentiments, and he said, like, oh, it felt really great to get back out there. I felt good. I know that's what every player is going to be, but I mean, we had Zach Tom saying, like, like, I don't feel great, and it doesn't feel good to run earlier this season. So, suffice
The
it
one
to
other
say,
thing that I'm going to add about Oliver is I believe that LaFleur was asked about him because he opened up his window, and he said because he hasn't been able to do anything until recently, that maybe it wasn't LaFleur. Maybe I know it was during one of the press conferences that they're going to keep him strictly as an edge rush guy to let him ramp up into what we want him to do. So I don't know if that answers any questions to anybody, but I know that's what they said.
I think you got, like, it's not the same, but you got to look at it like how they used Edge last year. Like, how he missed like the first month of the season with injury, and or not the whole, but he missed like a big chunk of the first month or so of the season with soft tissue injuries, and then it was like he was out there to blitz, or he was out there to do like one thing, and it was like, you have one job on every play. Like, there's no read and react, there's no like scan half the field kind of thing. It's like, you're here to blitz the A gap. You're here to cover that tight end. You're here to set the edge against this tackle kind of thing and stuff. And yeah, the way I took LaFleur's comments is similar to how you did, where it's like, it's going to be bare bones simple for him because, like you said, he can't practice. Like, you're on pup and IR function the same way in that regard, where it's like, you can go to all the meetings, you can do all the mental rep stuff, you can rehab in the facility, but you cannot practice. And yeah, like, I don't care how brilliant you are, like, of a football
And I think
savant.
they have to have limited conversations with him. They can't have like
Yeah,
full
that
out.
rule has always confused me. Like, I think he can go to every organized meeting, but he can't have like, like when you're in college, there's no office hour, or there's like limited office hour time. Like there's limited contact outside of practice or the meetings that he can have with the coaching staff. At least that's how it was before. I don't know how they've changed it since COVID and stuff, but you're right that at least used to be part of the IR pup rules. So yeah, like it'll like it gives them another dimension if he can come back and contribute, but it'll be a narrow band of his contribution. But you know, I joked before the Parsons trade that depending on what Dallas demanded, because we joked about it this past week that at no point did we think Parsons cost was going to be what it was and that low. Like, and I joked on a couple like message boards that like, we all know what's going to happen. The Packers are going to be mentioned in the trade, but then Gutekunst is going to be like, I'm not parting with 4 first-round picks, and I have a Micah Parsons at home in a Micah Parsons light at home in Colin Oliver, and I got shot to shreds for saying that. But I'm like, I'm mostly joking, but on some level, they're going to be like, we don't have to pay this kid $50 million a year, and he, in a very tight vacuum, can offer some of the similar things that Micah does. And what his return and Cox's return would open up is more interior snaps for Micah, more snaps at 3 technique for Rashawn Inagbare, and Lucas when he comes. Lucas especially is the one, and I wish they were getting him back this week, but they've got to just take it super slow. Like I appreciate that they're treating it the way that we wanted them to treat Zach Tom's injury. And, it's a different injury. And some people are like, oh, like, I don't like. I think Lucas is just being honest that I don't think there was a setback, but I do think he's being honest that he's like, yeah, shit, we thought it was good to go, but fuck, like, it really
I
hurts
wonder
now.
if it's Liz Frank.
I hope not. Or plantar fasciitis or whatever.
That's the one. Plantar fasciitis, not Liz Frank. Why did I?
Liz Frank is bad.
My mind is kind of like gone today. But the plantar fasciitis, I wonder if it's that, because I've dealt with a little bit of it, and it can be like that, where you feel good, you're feeling better, and then all of a sudden you go out and start doing your normal shit, and it's like, nope.
And it's very much similar to what we said about Jaden Reed, but honestly worse, where it's like you can't really inject your foot because there's not a lot of like places for the needle to go in, and then there's not a lot of blood flow, so like it's hard to use painkillers there. And then like with Reed, it was like, okay, he has to cut, but Reed weighs $190 soaking wet in the rain kind of thing. Lucas is 270 and he has to take on 300 plus pound linemen every play. So I do think it's kind of like managing itself in terms of like when he'll realistically be able to come back. But with Wyatt out, Lucas's impact is that's where Lucas's absence is gonna be felt more. It's in that pass rush. Like I said, the faster they can get Cox and Oliver back, the more flexibility they have to move Inagbare and Gary inside. And we've seen them do that a little bit, but not having that third guy who they trust to play outside and inside is limiting their flexibility in that regard. And we haven't even really talked about Riley except for when you mentioned it. Yeah, you're right on the nose that he is another nose tackle type. Don't look up his RAS card. It's red. it's nothing to see here. Leslie Nielsen, nothing to see here. But, Baldinger has some like clips of him setting a double team, standing up a double team. He knows what he is, and he's not going to get shoved off the ball. And like you said, there is a chance that he could. And that's the thing is like when you're a run stuffing nose tackle, there's not a lot of a scheme you need to pick up, because it's like the only call you need to know is, are we slanting left or right? Like if you call a call, which way are you expecting me to go? And you can just tap the guy on the butt cheek for the first couple weeks to like make sure he knows which way kind of thing. But otherwise, it's like
guys, when I played that year was, if I'm not in the right spot, just slap me in the ass and tell me which way I got to go.
Yeah. And so it's like we're just hold up this double team and don't get reach blocked. Like there's simple rules for nose tackles, and like there's nothing sexy about his highlight film, but they, as much as I wanted them to get more of a three technique type, they do need just bodies they can rotate in and keep. That's the thing, is like they don't have a guy who can win lightning quick from the defensive tackle room, but you do need bodies to then keep the guys who are the better pass rushers in that room, in Wooden, Brinson, and Brooks, fresh for passing downs. And then this gets back to what we were talking about after the Detroit game, where it's like, if you're able to get up on opponents, just let the dogs loose and live with the results, because you're a divot away from having to replace another defensive lineman, and you've just got to play with a little more fire in the belly at this point. We saw LaFleur do it last week, and we need to see Hafley adjust. And the thing with Hafley is, I think he does his better coaching when he's down a couple bullets from, when he's short a couple bullets, because then he starts to be like, okay, if I do this, this, and this, I can emulate the same thing I was getting when everyone was healthy. So, because I think when everyone was healthy, Hafley was a little bit content to be like, my front four will get there eventually, and like they're gonna respect the run, but it's okay. We're gonna play sound defense. Now I think it's like, I have to push button A for pressure, I have to push button B for run stop, and I have a few sliders that I can get a little cutesy and mess around with the opposing, the pre-snap looks and stuff. But I think that Hafley is going to get a little creative. And I know everyone is going to roll their eyes at what LaFleur said, about the game plan this week, but I don't have a problem with him saying, like, we're going to probe this defense, because I know the talk is about how the Bears lead the league by a like wide ass margin in turnovers, turnover differentials, all that kind of stuff. But when you peel away, and I know that you can't just peel it away, but when you peel away their turnovers, this is a shit defense. And I know that they've been missing key players for a bunch of the season. They got Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon back this past week, but with how the Packers have run the ball the past 2 weeks, especially last week, or really the Vikings, we saw what they did against the Seahawks on defense, what the Vikings defense did against the Seahawks, where they did hold the Seahawks in check for most of the game. It was their offense stabbed them in the back too many times. And this past week, Green Bay was having a success on the ground against a much better defensive front than what the Bears bring. And that's the thing, is like, the Bears paid all this money to a bunch of veterans, and like, for as much as Packers fans are belly aching over what Rashawn Gary is or isn't doing, Montez Sweat is making more money than him, and they have the same stats. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, like, yeah, well, Parsons, Gary plays with Parsons, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, yeah, but we were told that Sweat was so much better than Rashawn, and he single-handedly was going to make this pass rush work. That's the part about the Bears that I just do not... I can't wrap my mind around, is like, this team has a bad front seven that doesn't stop the run well. They can't rush the passer with any sort of consistency, and yet they lead the league in interceptions by like 8 or something stupid like that. And I know they've played a few teams that are turnover prone, but it just further emphasizes how, Jordan, just take your shots when they're there, but don't play hero ball. And Josh Jacobs, for the love of everything holy, tuck the fucking football away this weekend. He had a couple against Detroit where it was kind of like, like you could kind of see that thing loaf of bread itself a little bit. And I'm like, this Chicago team knows they're not good on defense, and that their only weapon is like, we will punch, kick, scrape, claw at the ball at every opportunity. So like, Jacobs, Wilson, the receiving options, take care of the football, and Jordan, just like, be smart this weekend. And I don't have a problem with LaFleur if he treats this like the Minnesota game, in a sense where he's like, if we can just road grade these guys, we will take it. And I like, that's the thing, is like, everyone's like, oh, but the passing, I was like, he did throw more in the first half and kind of in the beginning of the third quarter. And then once they figured out like Minnesota can't do shit on offense, LaFleur was like, sim to end. Let's just get to Thursday and stuff. And Love should be another 10 days healthier than he was even on Thanksgiving. What's it called? Hopefully you're getting Golden back, you're getting Reed back and stuff. Jacobs is 10 days removed from Thanksgiving as well and stuff. But like, I know a lot of people are going to complain that right after a game that we were just lauding LaFleur for and giving him his flowers, I do not at all have a problem with his comments on Wednesday where he kind of said like, yeah, we were aggressive on Thanksgiving, but we still have an identity we're trying to establish, and we want to see what we are able to do against this Chicago front seven. To me, that's LaFleur through the nice out exterior saying, like, we don't think your run defense is worth shit, and we're going to test that come Sunday. And I really like having that attitude going into this game.
For sure, but since I derailed everything, should we actually touch on the injury reports before we get too far gone?
Okay, so we've kind of touched on the DNPs. So obviously Wyatt is a DNP because he's going on IR, and Lucas and Savion have matching foot injuries. As we said, no real update on Savion. It's kind of like it's one of those he's just dealing with it kind of injuries, it feels like. And then with Lucas, Demovsky has the report. He has the tweet of Lucas's response to it. The way I take it, he's back to being fringe week to week to day, and it's like you said, it's like it probably is some sort of plantar fasciitis thing where it's like at some point it's gonna just be he's just gonna have to deal with it, and that sucks because Lucas has been on a really good run. He was on a really good run this season. It's been a bummer that he's basically missed half the games at this point, but I want him back sooner than later. And at the same time, if this team is going to make a deep run, they need him for the playoffs. So
and I think Micah wants him back because ever since Micah showed up, he's done nothing but rave about Lucas Van Ness. So
yeah. And it's really funny because I see like people being like, oh, like he talks about Devontae and Lucas, but he doesn't talk about Rashawn. I think, part of that is just like those are two guys that he's like, I can bring these two young guys to another level kind of like Rashawn is older than him. And not that like, he and Rashawn can't have a good working relationship, but I think he's like, I know who that guy is. He knows who he is kind of thing. Like, cool, we respect each other. Rashawn has only had like good things to say about Micah being in the building, so I don't think Micah not saying anything about. I think he just looks at it's like Lucas and Devontae are two guys who have not tapped their potential yet, and Micah's like, I can help them get there because they are so physically gifted, and he knows he's not getting Devontae back this season, so it's like you're right, like. If Micah could magic massage Lucas's feet, he would at this point.
and on top of that, I think Micah also sees the versatility that Lucas can bring, like you were mentioning earlier about how he could drop to the 3 technique, how he could be, I go back to my favorite friggin' lineup out there. You have Rashawn on one side, Micah on the other, and then Lucas at D tackle. And I think Micah sees that and it's like, yeah, because that's going to stop these triple teams. That's going to stop these,
And I think an angle that not a lot of people have talked about is if you go back and watch the early season, especially against Detroit in week 1 against like a not super mobile quarterback and a little bit against Cleveland, the thing that Lucas brings is he is the best zone dropper of the defensive line outside of Micah. Micah's different because Micah's a linebacker. But out of everyone else, Lucas was the guy that if Hafley wanted to only bring 4, but he wanted to blitz one of Quay, Edge Cooper, or Edge, it was always Lucas that was dropping into cover. Like the first third down of the season, it's Lucas who goes and makes the like tackle / pass break up on Jahmyr Gibbs in the flat. And like we've seen Inagbare and Gary try to do it, and like they know where to be kind of thing and stuff. But Lucas is definitely the most fluid of those 3 guys moving backwards and laterally. So I do think that is a part of where a little bit of explanation of where the A gap blitzes have gone. And at the same time, I think Hafley's got to push that button regardless. And I said it since last week's review episode. This is a week where it's really funny because Bears fans are all saying like, make Jordan Love beat us. Like let's dare Jordan to beat us kind of thing. And they're not even saying it in terms of like, so we can get turnover. It's like, they just think Jordan is so crap or so dog shit lucky that like he's going to be the one to crumble. But it's like, no, that is how Green Bay should approach this game, is like, make Caleb have to throw from the pocket against you. And if guys beat you kind of thing. But like, don't let Chicago just lean on you in the run game or be undisciplined and let Caleb run outside the pocket. But
oh no, we were doing so well.
okay.
We were doing so well.
I know. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by my internet, the Packers have just gone trigger happy listing limited participants, to, as we've joked, to avoid potential fines for incorrect injury reporting and stuff. But obviously you have the guys coming who are designated to return from PUP or IR who are limited for obvious reasons. But around them, so the ones that I'm not too worried about are Bullard, Cooper, Jacobs, Jordan, Sorrell, Zach Tom, Quay, I think looks a lot better. And then the remaining limiteds though. So Wicks, I don't know if that's the same ankle he's kind of been, that's the same ankle to the same calf that's been dogging him all year. But we saw him bolo it a little on the first touchdown catch, but he did stay in the game, make all the other plays and stuff. So
well, if he'd keep his shoes on, we wouldn't have this friggin' problem.
So there's that one. Quay looks like he'll probably be back this week. What's it called? Hobbs, LaFleur had some positive comments on. I think after how poorly it went early in the season, they probably just sit him until maybe the Denver game. I think they're going to want him to have...
From what I've been seeing, they say he's pretty close.
Yeah. And like I said, I just think that, they were so like... And, people are going to be like, oh, they're trying to justify the contract. I think it was, we want the two best tackling corners out there. And Hobbs is a good cover guy. We're going to let him work through whatever he's working through. And honestly, I think the MCL sprain against the Eagles was actually, or against Carolina, was kind of a blessing in disguise, because it took the decision of sticking with an untenable situation out of both Hobbs and the team's hands. It's like, well, you're injured and you can't play, so let's just get you right as you're going to get. The clips that a couple guys posted from practice, he did look to be moving a lot better than he was in the game, so you hope that he can carry that forward. The couple big names to watch for me are Carl Brooks, because of the D-line depth, and and Matthew Golden, and Golden, it's hard to tell because it's his wrist. It's like he's gonna move around fine in practice because his wrist is on his hand. We did see him catch the ball well, but that was what I was kind of shaking my head at when, I forget if it was which reporter it was, but they're like, "Oh, here's Golden warming up before the Thanksgiving game. He's moving around really well," but I'm like, isn't it his wrist? I don't, he's not catching. And that was the thing, is like, he wasn't catching passes in the few clips that everyone was posting. So I was like, well, like, what are we seeing? So it's good to see him catch passes in the clips, but that is, and from what I've heard is that he was pushing to play on Thursday, but the team said, let's just wait another week. And so I'm hoping that he is back this week.
Slap a cast on it and Antonio Freeman that shit.
Just don't dislodge it dunking the ball over the goalpost. I know you can't. I know it's a penalty nowadays, but I do remember in Super Bowl 31, it was like, oh, Antonio's been holding that wrist since he dunked the ball over the goalpost, and it's like, what are you doing?
Oh, man, I could go on and on about that season, because I just remember that he broke that arm, they slapped a cast on it, and that was like his best season he ever had.
And I just remember, because that is the clip. That's the play that goes with the clip of Holmgren yelling at Favre, right? You broke his arm. That is one of my favorite Holmgren clips ever, because it's the way he's like, you broke his arm, you broke his effing arm, so listen up, we're going back to square one and we're running all our basic stuff, and Andy Reid is just kind of like hiding in the background. But
Yeah. Yeah, I just
over to the
remember
Bears.
from that point on, it was, let's just break his arm again. Maybe he'll play better or something. And yeah, but
So
anyway,
to
go
the
ahead.
Bears side of things, they have a much shorter injury report, but their DNPs are a little interesting. That said, the Bears didn't. They had a simulated practice on Wednesday, so DNPs. What's it called? Ruben Hippolyte, rookie linebacker, but um, Kyle Manungai, Rome Odunze, and Tyreek Stevenson, so running back, wide receiver, cornerback, all were listed as DNPs if the Bears had practice, and not with rest, with an ankle, foot, and hip injury, respectively. We'll see how that tracks the rest of the week. But if any of those, especially the two guys in Manungai and Odunze, if they're at all limited, that really puts a hamper on what the Bears want to do on offense, because Manungai, they need Manungai to give that two back punch, because Swift is not a lead bell cow back. And Odunze is kind of their Watson, where they ask him to do a lot of like run game inserts, and like they ask him to dig out edge players and stuff like that. So he's in, and not just being the wide receiver one. Limited participants, linebacker TJ Edwards, who has missed the last several games. He was limited with a hand and hamstring. Oh, he was the only limited participant, and then everyone else was a full participant. Though, kind of curious that they list two guys with concussions as full participants in an estimated practice. I'm not sure what Billings and Robinson did last week, or if this is like their second week of coming back from a concussion. And then DB or cornerback Jalen Johnson, full participant with a groin, and then linebacker Noah Sewell, elbow. So the Bears, they're relatively healthy overall. Like I said, it's hard to say because they didn't hold an official practice on Wednesday, but it's not great that they listed three starters with injuries and not just rest, as for reasons they would have been a DNP if they had practice. In all likelihood, they probably are limited participants the rest of the week and are at worst questionable. But like I said, those are three names to watch moving forward for the rest of the week.
Yeah,
Go for it.
I mean that's solid. Like I said, we kind of derailed this whole show anyway. So
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like this one is a weird one to talk about. So, all the emphasis is on, the Bears won last year in Lambeau. If you're not a Green Bay fan, the context has totally left as to how that game happened, and how Green Bay honestly was just so over that game once, especially when, like, I know Love left the game with the stinger issue, but really it was the Watson injury, where once that happened, you could just see it. None of the Packers wanted to be on that field. Jacobs was already not playing that game, and it's like, once Watson blew his knee out, I was honestly shocked they came back. And it speaks to how bad the Bears were, that this Packers team that like clearly did not want to be out there, and then was already like, okay, we made the playoffs, but Christian just disintegrated his knee, and now you're telling us we got to finish the rest of this dumb game, and we got to go to Philadelphia next week. Fuck, like you could see that palpable attitude on the whole team that was left on the field there. And I trust this team to wake up against a good division opponent. Like, they didn't last year, but this year they have woken up for every divisional game. And like I said, they could have easily made the Minnesota game dumb, stupid, and ugly. It was ugly in the sense that Minnesota couldn't move the ball, and Green Bay was like, we're totally fine with the three yards and a cloud of dust approach. And it was the right one for that game, given the short week. But they have had a game plan that has made sense for all these divisional games and stuck to it and executed. And because they're 3 for 3, 2 for 2 in the last 2 weeks, I expect them to have that same mentality and execution level come Sunday in Lambeau against the Bears. And that's why, like, we could go into, like, you know, that's the thing is Johnson does a lot of the things LaFleur does. There's a lot of pre-snap window dressing. There's a lot of motion, eye candy, and all that kind of stuff. The Bears did a lot of work. You don't just get two 100-yard rushers in the same game by, like, by dumb luck. And at the same time, watching that game, Philly's defense looked like a defense that was like, once their offense did nothing for a quarter, they were like, well, screw this. Like, you like, those three defensive tackles who have been stalwarts in Jalen Carter, Moro Ojomo, and Jordan Davis, those three guys got dog walked by this Chicago O-line. I know they're improved. I know that they're playing with a swagger and yada, 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 but these are still flawed players. I think Dahlman is the best lineman on that O-line, and Wright is the next one after him. I don't like their guards. I think they're, like, very one-dimensional players, and I think the Packers are just gonna want this one way more than the Eagles do. And, like, you just think of where the two teams were. The Eagles have honestly been in the doldrums for the past month, and going into that game, they're coming off, like, blowing a 21-0 lead to the Cowboys the Sunday before. The Packers are not, and that's the thing is, like, everyone's like, and I said it too, like, they've slipped up in this scenario, but they weren't even at the halfway point of the season when they had those mess ups. Like, you had Rasheed Walker talking about going undefeated when you blew it against the Browns, and you were coming off the high of beating Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, and, your first place in the conference and all that kind of stuff. Now it's like, we have got to win to take the division. And I don't think they're going to sleepwalk into this one. I think they're going to come out with both eyes open. I'm expecting great things from this team moving forward and their best football ahead of them. And frankly, like, Johnson is going to do his stuff. I expect they're going to have a trick player or two up their sleeve because that's what he does. But honestly, win the line of scrimmage. And if Packers can stuff them in a locker and control the tempo of this game, I have no problems if this is a 40 carry, 22 pass game for the Packers offense. Because if you're just chewing up this Bears defense, which you should be able to, because like I said, when you look at their stats outside of the turnovers, this is a bad rush defense. They are giving up 100, just under 134 yards at 5.2 yards per carry. Like, that is horrible. And like I said, they are to the point where they know they suck. And so all they do is they're like, you're going to run by us, but we're going to try and rip the ball out of your arm when you go by, kind of thing. Like, or we're just going to start jumping routes in pass coverage because we can't hang and we can't rush the passer. But so our only survival instinct is we're going to just jump routes and take. So expect a lot of double moves, expect max protect from the Packers, or honestly, like, test the waters with straight pass protection. You shouldn't have to go max protect. You should be able to get 5 out in the route. And if you're able to do this against this defense, Jordan should have a freaking field day and it should be a massacre. Like, and I'm allowed to say, we're allowed to have those kind of expectations because we're fans. We've seen this offense go. I know that we've seen it struggle, but this Chicago defense can't take away or do the things that have given the Packers fits this season. They can't rush the passer anywhere near what the Browns did, or even the Panthers did to them. They can't stop the run like the Panthers or Browns did, or what the Eagles did to them on that Monday night game. And the Packers O-line is in a much better place than it was back when they played Philadelphia on that Monday night game. So, like, I know this sounds like it's coming from a place of hubris, but Green Bay should dominate the line of scrimmage in this game. And if you do that, you're going to eviscerate this Chicago team because, and like I said, I know this is going to kind of sound like contradictory, but where I'm saying, like, dominate with the run game on offense, but your best defense against the Chicago run game is putting up points. You're putting up a touchdown, getting up multiple scores on Chicago. cool, you can do all your pre-snap shit and stuff like that, but you can't run the ball if you're down 14 the whole game kind of thing. So this is one definitely for LaFleur. Take the ball first, put your best sequence of plays together, and put a touchdown on the board on them. Put the spotlight and magnifying glass on Chicago from as early as you can in this game. So
Yeah,
that's my thoughts and strategy.
right. And there is going to be a little extra to it because Ben Johnson's introductory press conference. Well, I like beating the Packers twice a year, so I want to keep doing that. So there is going to be a little extra there, and just like you said, they got to come out. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a 100% perfect game, but it's got to be. You've got to at least come out and do 85% to be able to win.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it's pretty sad when the head coach of the team is even not raving about how his starting quarterback is playing. And they I know you said the Packer fans are kind of saying this, but it is kind of true. They're paper champs right now. They're paper tigers right now because, all advanced metrics, they're not that great. And you've just got to go in there and exploit those things. And don't get too cutesy with anything, especially, don't go back to this rotate in, rotate out offensive lineman. Don't,
I think that's over. I think that they recognize during the stretch run, Belton, he's made some mistakes. A couple, like the deep shot they missed to Watson is because Belton kind of got beat for pressure and stuff. But I think they recognize that this is the stretch run, and you got to get Belton as many snaps with the rest of the O line. Like at guard, he needs snaps at guard, and he needs the rest of the O line needs snaps with him in there to gel. And so, like the rotation stuff is over at this point. To me, it should be over.
It should be, but you know how things go with
Yeah,
the way LaFleur works. So, like I said, just don't get cutesy with anything. You should have some reinforcements coming in with, hopefully Golden and hopefully Reed gets. I hate this whole thing that they're going to wait until they absolutely can't wait any longer to activate them. Just activate them and call it good. And everybody knows he's coming back already, and unless something major happens, then whatever. But should have some playmakers coming in, should be able to push the ball, like you said, and don't do anything stupid. Keep your head. These Bears are going to friggin' do everything in the world to irritate you. Keep your head, play smart, and it should be a victory.
yep. So shall we? We're pushing an hour because we've gone on tangent after tangent. Shall we go to our over unders?
Yeah.
Never tell me the odds.
So I don't know. I've been struggling putting these together the last couple weeks just because
I think you've got some good ones here. Like, I understand why it's because there's been so many weird injuries that it's like, what's going to happen?
weird injuries and then like weird games. Like Romeo disappeared there for like 2 or 3 games, and Watson stepped in and covered and shit like that. So yeah, it's just been hard to come up with them. So I do have a few. I do have Micah over under half a sack.
I'm going under because I I am doing all the reverse juju and jinxing and all that kind of stuff. So I will continue to go under because it seems to be working.
I'm going to go over. I think he can have another 1.5, 2 sack game this game just because he's finally found his groove, and maybe with, I know I have to temper my expectations because, the type of the player that they're bringing in this late, but it does kind of remind me of a Howard Green pickup where, he comes in, fills a spot, but I have a feeling now that this Riley's in there that can eat up double teams and stuff like that, that should open up Micah from not having to deal with triple teams and that should help out a little bit. So I'm hoping that he can have at least 1.5. But I set it at. I was going to put it at the 1.5. But I was like, nah, that might be
Especially
asking
because
too
mobile
much.
quarterback and how much is Halfley going to green light them and stuff like that.
And I think that's the other thing is because it is a mobile quarterback that it does open up Micah into being able to possibly get more.
Right.
So it is what it is, but I took the over on it. Over under Watson 55.5 receiving yards. Now I set it at 55.5 over the 45.5 from last week because he has been, like I said, Romeo kind of disappeared for a couple of weeks. It has been more of a Wicks Watson type thing. I'm also setting it a little bit high in hopes of maybe doing a reverse jinx type thing that they do get Golden back and he can get some of, I'm still hoping for that first career touchdown. I do want to say these guys that are already trying to portray Golden as a bust, you're fucking idiots. Just shut up. But I've got it under just in hopes that he, I think he's going to get at least one or two decent sized ones, but I'm just in hopes that these other weapons are going to come in and Jordan will be able to spread the ball around a little bit more.
I think Jordan is going to spread it around. He has done that against division opponents a lot, but also Watson just has a lot of these guys' numbers on this Chicago defense. If you look at how he's performed against them obviously he got the last two Lambeau games. He got hurt. He tore his knee up last year. And in 2023, he was still out with the hamstring after he kind of fucked it up against the Chiefs that season. But in the two games in Chicago, he's tore them up. So, or his last two games. So 2022 with Aaron and then 2024 with Jordan. He has torn up the Bears in Chicago. So I think that we're going to see a continuing of that success. And I think he's going to have like 3 catches, but I think one of them's going to be a 40-yarder kind of thing.
And it could be. Like I said, I'm hoping that Jordan will be able to have more targets from other guys. And nothing against Watson, nothing against all these others. It seems like the offense does a little bit better when you have those other options available.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of hoping for. Love over under 250.5 yards. I did go over on it because I have a feeling this is going to be a slugfest for a little bit, and it's just going to get to the point where he's going to have to throw it for a while. Now, whether or not that means that, the slugfest ends at like in the third quarter and then they can just kind of slow down with it or whatever, I don't know, but I have him set as an over.
I've got him in as an over because, like I said, I think they're going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, and I think that means that they're going to dig deep into their play action pass package, and therefore they're going to be able to take some shots and Love's. I don't think he's going to throw the ball around a lot, but I think he's going to cross 280. Like I put 287, and yeah, it's going to be like one of those like you have like 2 touchdown 287 on like 70 something %. And it'll just be a like clean, efficient day at the office for him, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then my last one I've got is Jacobs over under 65.5 rushing. I'm taking the over on it just because I like I said, this offense is starting to seem to like it's getting its groove in. So might as well try to push as much as you can on it.
Yeah, I've got him going over. I put 120. I think that he is just going to absolutely chew up this Chicago defense.
I get that, but for some reason he has struggled trying to get that 100 yards game this year. So I don't know. I have a feeling that they're going to be able to rotate in a lot of, Wilson and Brooks and all those guys in that he's going to get his, but I don't think he's going to quite hit that 100.
Fair enough. But anything else you got for not today's game, Sunday's game, or You want to just put a bow on it for both of us?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I where's this at? Is this at Lambeau?
Yeah, I think that's part of. But I think everyone's like, oh my god, the spread is 6.5 points. You know the they why is Green Bay getting all the love? And it's like because Green Bay is like and people don't want to look at advanced stats and they're like, oh, Green Bay fans just parry, they just throw around EPA and DVOA. And it's like, yeah, because the Packers are like fifth and the Bears are like 20 something. And you look at counting stats and you look, like I said, the Bears are like the 30th rush they're giving up 5.2 yards a carry on the ground. And in the air, they're giving up like 70 something or 67% completion percentage. So it's like, I understand that they're intercepting a lot of balls. They're also allowing a lot of them to get completed and for a bunch of yards. So it's like, and I get, like I said, I get that Philly was one of the best turnover averse teams that the Bears have faced, and they turned them over. But like I said, Jordan, just you don't have to be the hero on Sunday. Josh, tuck the fucking ball away. I know it's not the same, but Josh does have a tendency to reach for down markers, reach for the end zone, and we saw the Bears be opportunistic with pulling the ball away from the tush push and stuff like that. So it's that kind of nuance that I'm like, those are the details you need to focus on this week because Josh, your fumbleitis has been a problem this season, and it can't be one on Sunday or in 2 Sundays after that. So tighten the screws down, Packers, and like that's the thing. If it's a big if because of how good the Chicago has been at turning opponents over, but if Green Bay doesn't turn the ball over, they might win this game by 21 points. Like I am not even like I can say that without a hitch that if they don't turn the ball over, they should steamroll Chicago because the teams are that far apart on paper. And like I said, it's like, oh, if you take out that run or you take out that one negative play kind of thing, you can't do that. But it just goes to show like how dependent the Bears are on turnovers to get them off the field. Because when they don't get them, they're just like, oh, we're supposed to stop that, or oh, we can not let them catch the ball, or oh, am I supposed to tackle that guy? Like that is literally how their defense operates most of the time. So like play smart, Green Bay, and you can absolutely embarrass this Bears team on Sunday and like just take all those dumb Chicago fans and shove them in a locker and throw the key out kind of thing.
Yeah. And just as a great poet once said, the Bears still suck. So
what a fine note to end the night on. But please check out the website ohanapackers.org. Support us through our merch. I am going to try and get my writer's cap on. Like I said, it's a lot easier to write about the Packers when they're doing well, but I'm going to try to be better about that too, and not only be a fair weather writer. We will take that all and flow. And there's a lot of stuff to write about right now. Like guys are coming back healthy, and that means that there's a lot of good decisions for LaFleur to have to make on offense. Like I said, for Halfley, he's going to have to mad professor it a little bit, but I do like that's my favorite form of Halfley is when he has to put the goggles on, the thinking cap on, and get a little extra creative with things. So check us out there on the website. Please follow us on your favorite social medias at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. Please follow us there. I haven't checked the count of followers. We can somehow get to 100 followers. We are live streaming the show after this week's game because we're in the afternoon slate. We're America's Game of the Week, so Joe and I will be live for the post game show. So if we're able to get to that 100 subscribers by Friday, or by Sunday, we'll be able to live stream the show not only on YouTube but also on Facebook. Please follow up. Please check us out on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and you bet your butts that we're going to be reaching out for comments, thoughts, questions before, during, and after this Sunday's game. Because the Packers, I know that their path to the 1 seed, they're going to need help with these NFC West teams. But if the Packers win this week and in 2 weeks, they can effectively put Chicago's playoff hopes on life support. And as much as so many mainstream media people are trying to say, like, yeah, the Bears can be for real, they can prove themselves and stuff, the Packers can take that all away in a swoop and really just snuff the light out of them, especially, like, if you win close this week, then it gets into the whole, like, oh, if it was at Soldier, like, we would have won kind of thing and stuff. If you just snuff them out this weekend, the doubt creeps in for a team like that so fast. And the luster comes off Johnson a little bit. The comments like, oh, we're winning. I know that it's a little out of context, but the fact that he said the words, we're winning in spite of our passing game, that gets louder and stuff. You can snowball this Bear team so badly if you just do what needs to be done come Sunday. Like I said, we've talked about this team in this regard, but I have a little more faith in them doing it this time around. But until then, as we say, go Pack go. The Bears still suck, and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who wanna go.